You wake up one morning, the sun streaming through your window, and for a moment, everything feels calm. But then, like a shadow creeping into the corners of your mind, you feel it, a familiar unease. You've been here before, not just in this room, not just in this moment, but in this pattern. You recognize the choices you're about to make, the mistakes you're about to repeat, and yet you feel powerless to stop them. It's as if some invisible force is pulling you toward the same old traps, the same old pain. You know better. You've learned the lessons. So why does this keep happening? Here's the unsettling paradox. You are both the prisoner and the jailer. You are the one who keeps making the same mistakes, and yet you are also the one who desperately wants to break free. How can you be both? How can you simultaneously know what's wrong and yet feel compelled to do it anyway? This is not just a question of willpower or discipline. It's something deeper, something hidden in the labyrinth of your psyche. And it's not just you. This is a universal human experience. We all have our patterns, our cycles, our recurring mistakes. But why? Why do we sabotage ourselves, even when we know better? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, called this phenomenon the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to see, the part we bury because it's too painful, too shameful, too contradictory to who we think we are. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It lurks, it whispers, it pulls the strings of our behavior from the depths of our unconscious. And so we find ourselves trapped in a loop, repeating the same mistakes, not because we're foolish or weak, but because we're avoiding something we're not ready to face. But here's the question that demands an answer. What are you avoiding? What is it about yourself that you're so afraid to confront? And what would happen if you stopped running? The tension here is palpable, isn't it? Because deep down you know there's something you're not seeing, something that holds the key to breaking free. But to find it, you'll have to venture into the unknown, into the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime trying to ignore. Are you ready? Because the journey ahead is not for the faint of heart. It's a descent into the depths where the shadows wait and where the truth, your truth, lies hidden. The problem is not that you're incapable of change. It's not that you lack the intelligence or the will to break free from your patterns. The problem is far more insidious, far more deeply rooted in the architecture of your mind. It's a problem of identity. You are not just repeating mistakes, you are repeating yourself. Every time you fall into the same old patterns, you are unconsciously reaffirming who you believe yourself to be. And who you believe yourself to be is not just a collection of thoughts or memories. It's a story, a narrative that has been woven over years, decades, even lifetimes. This story is not just something you tell yourself, it's something you live. And until you confront the story, you will remain trapped in its plot. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He saw that the human psyche is not a monolithic entity, but a complex ecosystem of competing forces. There's the ego, the part of you that thinks it's in control, that believes it knows who you are. And then there's the unconscious, the vast, uncharted territory of your mind, where your fears, desires, and unresolved traumas reside. The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in compulsions. And when you ignore it, when you refuse to integrate its messages into your conscious life, it rebels. It forces you to confront what you've been avoiding, often in the most painful ways possible. This is why you keep repeating the same mistakes, because your unconscious is trying to tell you something, and it won't stop until you listen. But the problem goes even deeper than psychology. It's also philosophical. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "You have become who you are." At first glance, this seems like a statement of empowerment, but it's also a warning. It means that every choice you've made, every experience you've had, has shaped you into the person you are today. And if that person is someone who keeps making the same mistakes, it's because those mistakes are part of your identity. They are part of your becoming. This is a hard truth to swallow, because it means that your mistakes are not accidents, they are expressions of who you are. And until you change who you are, you will keep repeating them. So here's the question. Who are you, really? Not the version of yourself you present to the world, not the version you wish you were, but the version that exists in the shadows, the version that keeps making the same mistakes. What is it trying to tell you? And what would it mean to finally listen? The tension here is unbearable because it forces you to confront the possibility that your mistakes are not just errors, they are messages. And the message is this: you are not yet who you are meant to be. But to become that person, you will have to face the parts of yourself you've been running from. Are you ready to take that step? Because the journey is just beginning. The consequences of ignoring this hidden force, this shadow, this unconscious narrative, are not just personal, they ripple outward, shaping not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Think about it. Every time you repeat the same mistake, you reinforce a pattern that extends far beyond yourself. You create a feedback loop, a self-fulfilling prophecy that traps you in a cycle of frustration and despair. And the longer you stay in this cycle, the harder it becomes to break free. Why? Because the brain is a creature of habit. It thrives on predictability, even when that predictability is painful. Neurologically, every time you repeat a behavior, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with it. Over time, these pathways become so entrenched that the behavior feels automatic, inevitable. This is why breaking free from your patterns feels so impossible. It's not just a psychological battle, it's a neurological one. But the consequences go even deeper than that. They seep into your relationships, your work, your sense of self-worth. When you keep making the same mistakes, you start to believe that you're incapable of change. You start to see yourself as flawed, broken, unworthy. And this belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You attract people and situations that confirm your worst fears, that reinforce your sense of inadequacy. This is what Carl Jung meant when he talked about projection, the tendency to see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. When you're trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage, you project your inner turmoil onto the world around you. You blame others for your problems, or you blame yourself in a way that's so harsh, so unrelenting, that it becomes another form of self-sabotage. Either way, you're stuck. And then there's the societal dimension. We live in a culture that glorifies success and stigmatizes failure. We're taught to hide our mistakes, to pretend we have it all together, even when we don't. This creates a vicious cycle. We make mistakes, we feel ashamed, we hide them, and then we make the same mistakes again because we haven't learned from them. This is why so many people feel stuck, why so many people feel like they're living lives of quiet desperation. They're trapped in a cycle of repetition, not because they're weak or lazy, but because they've been conditioned to avoid the very thing that could set them free: self-awareness. So here's the question: what are the unseen consequences of your patterns? How are they shaping your life, your relationships, your sense of self? And what would it mean to break free? The tension here is almost unbearable because it forces you to confront the possibility that your mistakes are not just personal, they're systemic. They're part of a larger pattern, a larger story. And until you change the story, you will remain trapped. But how do you change a story that's been written over a lifetime? How do you rewrite the script of your life? The answer lies in the next step, a step that requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to face the unknown. Are you ready? Because the stakes have never been higher. Breaking free from the cycle of repetition is not about willpower. It's not about gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to change. That approach might work in the short term, but it will never lead to lasting transformation. Why? Because it doesn't address the root of the problem. The root of the problem is not your behavior, it's your identity. To break free, you must rebel against the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. You must dare to rewrite the script. This rebellion begins with awareness. You must become a witness to your own patterns, a detached observer of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness, toward integrating the fragmented parts of yourself into a cohesive whole. It's not an easy journey. It requires you to confront the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the parts you've buried in the shadows, but it's the only way to break free. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Start by asking yourself, what are the stories I tell myself about who I am? Where did these stories come from? Are they true, or are they just inherited scripts handed down by my parents, my culture, my past experiences? This is where the work begins. You must question everything you think you know about yourself. You must be willing to dismantle the identity you've built, brick by brick, until you find the foundation. And when you find it, you must ask, is this foundation solid or is it built on lies? Once you've identified the stories that are holding you back, the next step is to rewrite them. This is where radical self-honesty comes in. You must be willing to face the truth about yourself, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be. You must be willing to admit that you've been wrong, that you've been complicit in your own suffering. This is not about self-blame. It's about self-responsibility. It's about reclaiming your power. And then comes the hardest part. You must act. You must make choices that align with the new story you want to tell about yourself. This is where most people get stuck because it requires courage. It requires you to step into the unknown, to risk failure, to risk rejection. But this is the essence of rebellion. It's not enough to think differently. You must act differently. You must prove to yourself through your actions that you are not who you used to be. This is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice, a lifelong commitment. But with each choice, each act of rebellion, you weaken the old patterns and strengthen the new ones. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to believe in the possibility of change. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you break free. But this is only the beginning. The final step, the ultimate truth, is still ahead. It's the realization that will redefine everything you thought you knew about yourself and your place in the world. Are you ready to take that step? Because the journey is about to take a profound turn. Here it is, the ultimate truth, the realization that changes everything. You are not your mistakes. You are not your patterns, your habits, or your past. You are not even the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. You are something far greater, far more expansive, far more mysterious. You are the awareness behind the story. You are the consciousness that observes the patterns, the mistakes, the pain. And this awareness is not bound by the past. It is not bound by anything. It is free. This is the paradox at the heart of Carl Jung's work. To break free from the cycle of repetition, you must first realize that you were never truly trapped. The prison was an illusion, a construct of your own mind. The mistakes you've been repeating were not chains. They were mirrors. They were reflecting back to you the parts of yourself you refused to see. And now that you've seen them, now that you've faced them, you no longer need the mirrors. You are free to let them go. But this freedom is not what most people expect. It's not a freedom from pain or struggle or failure. It's a freedom within those things. It's the freedom to experience life fully, without resistance, without judgment. It's the freedom to make mistakes and not let them define you. It's the freedom to be human.